Good morning. Welcome to UCAN. I am Markel Bridges, Chairman for the UCAN Governing Board. On behalf of my fellow governing board members, a few of them are here, may raise your hands, and the entire UCAN staff who is also here, please raise your hands. We welcome you, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and as I may remember, yesterday was your birthday, so a happy belated birthday. We're happy to have you here with us today along with your team as we partner in serving the community. I want to also welcome a friend, Alderman Michael Scott, who is with us, our community partner, supporter, and dedicated staff as well. As most of you know, UCAN has worked hard and smart to become a pillar and partner in North Lawndale. We're in the community, we work with the community, we support the community, we hire from the community, and we advocate for the community. Among our community-based services and programs is our violence intervention and prevention services team that collaborates and cooperates with the city and many partners in this critical work. Trauma caused by violence affects our young people and prevents them from envisioning their future and reaching their full potential. But we must work closely together to provide resources and alternatives to help our youth thrive in a safer environment. They can be empowered to fulfill their full potential and become the future leaders. We can agree that programs need to be efficiently scaled to accommodate an escalating demand for coaching, meditation, and positive community engagement. As I close, I want to invite you back to our campus next month on September 21st as we proudly present the dedication and reception for the Pietra Place Healing Garden. This is the garden that's directly behind me, so you might even want to take a walk through it today. We invite you to come back and join that dedication. For more information, please visit UCAN's website, ucanchicago.org. Once again, welcome to UCAN and the North Lawndale community.
I'm just ready to go.
I know that's right. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Alderman Michael Scott Jr., Alderman here in the 24th Ward, and I want to welcome you all here to the 24th Ward and to this beautiful UCAN campus. Markel, I want to thank you for not only hosting us here, but being a great partner to us here in North Lawndale, and to you and all of your staff for all the hard work that you do here in our communities and across the city of Chicago. We often talk about, or the mayor often talks about, how violence is the singular problem that we have to solve here in the city of Chicago. Not unlike COVID, where this administration, took leaps and bounds and made sure that this city was safe during the pandemic and is opening safely now, and now going back into making sure that this COVID, this variant that we have at COVID is not taking us under. Similar to that is how the city wants to approach violence in our communities, taking a whole of government approach, which I think is very smart. And this mayor, unlike any other mayor, and I'll say this to any other mayor who wants to talk about it, has been dedicated to making sure communities like North Lawndale have the resources that they need to succeed. And that is why I like to call her my friend, and I like to call her the greatest mayor in the city of Chicago, my friend Lori Lightfoot.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Chairman Scott, for not only being here today and the warm words, but really the incredible leadership that you show in this community and really across the city. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. We are here today to announce a new, more coordinated, whole-of-government approach to addressing community violence. The people who are standing with me today have been and will be crucial in this new initiative. And let me introduce some of them. They are, of course, Chicago Department of Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady. Assistant Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Director of Violence Reduction, Norm Kerr. Chicago Postal Workers Union President, Keith Richardson. UCAN Violence Intervention and Prevention Services Director, Frank Perez. Coalition of Trade Unionist Presidents, Mamie Pratt. National Association of Letter Carriers, Chicago Branch, President Mac Julian. Mac is standing in the back of the room, so. And I also want to just give a shout out to the many other community, government, organized labor, and nonprofit partners joining us today that are here in the audience. Why don't you all stand and receive a round of applause. This pandemic has forced us to come to terms with ways in which our city simply wasn't working for everyone. And in thinking about the lessons learned of the last 16 months, we have brought the same kind of focus to the issue of community violence. For the city, this means borrowing pages from our COVID response that makes sense in the context of our ongoing fight against a different kind of pandemic, and that concerns community violence. And what did we learn from COVID-19 that has resonance here? We learned that systemic inequities are at the root of many of the problems that we are facing. And we learned that we had to come up with comprehensive and coordinated solutions to the issues facing our communities. But instead, like with COVID, instead of backing down from the challenges, we tackled COVID head on. And we did that in collaboration and in partnership with community leaders. We went into communities through efforts like the Racial Equity Rapid Response Team, and with a humble heart and a listening ear. We joined tables that had already been set for years. And as we listened, learned, and we decided together where resources needed to be brought. In other instances, we use our power of convening to bring together talented workers and innovators to dissect problems and forge new solutions. But regardless of our point of entry, we build an infrastructure that help educate, activate, and bring health solutions to the most vulnerable people at the time of greatest need. We want to apply those same lessons learned and lean into the infrastructure that we built to address the #1 issue plaguing our city right now, and that's community violence. And with today's announcement, we will do just that. I stand with my colleagues in city government and our community partners to announce the launch of a Community Safety Coordination Center, or Cscc. And here's what this new coordination center will mean in our fight against community violence. First, living under one roof will be all of the current city initiatives that impact community-based violence. Community supports, youth, public health, mental health, workforce development, schools, parks, libraries, all of the city initiatives that play vital roles in community safety, health, and well-being. And we will have and continue to make meaningful investments in these areas. But now with a greater focus and collaboration across sectors of work, we will break down silos and have more 360 visibility across vulnerable communities, and thereby be better able to see the problems and solve them, create more opportunities for innovation, and importantly, better serve our communities when they need us most. The center will be an information hub where information on violence interventions is collected, analyzed, and disseminated. It will also be a resource hub that acquires, allocates, and tracks the resources required to implement violence interventions, including material supplies, physical spaces, personnel, and importantly, funding. This new center will also coordinate violence interventions by bringing together representatives of multiple agencies, both government and non-governmental, and provide strategic guidance on violence intervention priorities, serving as a collaboration space for government, community, and thought leaders, all of which will be happening real time for the first time. In other words, this new center will act as a city resource nerve center and central location for violence interventions across Chicago, thus creating the systems and providing the resources, data collection, analysis, and mapping that we need in order to show a more comprehensive, data-driven approach to violence. And to be clear, we're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. Quite the opposite. Just this year, we have spent over $50 million on programs supporting violence prevention and reduction. These investments include street outreach, victim services, targeted interventions for high-risk youth, diversion programs, housing, legal supports for gender-based violence, and more. But now, all of these efforts will be housed under one roof. The center's resource pool will be extensive and further will show and demonstrate what we mean by an all-hands-on-deck approach. This research pool will allow us to address 7 social determinants that we know from the data and the science contribute to violence. First is employment. We will address this by providing residents with comprehensive job training and employment opportunities, as well as supporting the thousands of returning citizens who live in our city. Second is community revitalization, which we will address by continuing our work on rehabilitating and beautifying our neighborhoods through the power of infrastructure and helping residents find affordable, stable, high-quality housing. Third is violence diversion, which we will coordinate by presenting alternative response coordination and pre-arrest and pre-trial diversion programming. Fourth is violence interruption, which encompasses street outreach, victim services, and comprehensive shooting reviews. Fifth is social services navigation, which we will address by connecting high-risk individuals to case management services, hospital-based interventions, and other community-based social programs. Sixth is education and youth programming. And I could talk all day about this, but let me just say, we will address making our youth safer, feeling a sense of connection to their communities, knowing that the world is truly open to them and that their destiny is not preordained. Supporting our young people is the most important work that we can be doing as a city. And now we will bring all of those resources under one roof. They will be working together and innovating, so we will know what we are doing literally on an individualized basis, block basis, neighborhood basis, to support our young people in a way that we have not done before. This is critically important. And finally, the 7th bucket is health and wellness, which we will address by increasing residents' access to affordable health care, mental health care, harm reduction, and substance abuse recovery services. I will talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but ladies and gentlemen, the opioid crisis is real. It is surging and raging in the city of Chicago. It has not gotten the kind of notoriety over the course of this pandemic that it should, but now it will, because we will focus on it. We will bring it out of the shadows, but more importantly, we will do a better job of being coordinated and helping those residents who need us most, that are most at risk, by focusing services where the data tells us it needs to go. Now, one other thing that we know for sure is that we need to be close to the community in this work at a hyper-local level in order for us to truly bend the curve of violence. So toward that end, in addition to organizing a more coordinated whole-of-government approach to the work of community safety, again, borrowing a page from COVID, we have started the effort of reaching out anew to community leaders to organize a steering committee, not unlike the Racial Equity Rapid Response team that we were able to put together. And this community steering group will both guide and inform the work of the center. I believe strongly in the phrase, quote, "nothing for us without us." And in that spirit, we will seek to join tables already set, use our convening power, and create authentic collaborations and important feedback loop to meet communities' immediate needs around violence. This will be transformative if we get it right, if we do our work and create these authentic partnerships that I know that we can and must. Our initial areas of focus will of course be around gun violence, but not just the symptoms, the root causes. And what does the data tell us? It tells us that we need to maintain our focus on Black and brown boys and young adults. They are the ones most vulnerable, most likely to be victims, but also most likely to be criminal justice involved. And we need to continue our focus on gender-based violence. Ladies and gentlemen, another crisis that has raged through the pandemic that needs much more focus by us in the city. A couple of data points on that. Right now, our city is seeing over an 80% increase in fatal and non-fatal shootings related to domestic violence. And Black women and girls continue to experience gender-based violence at disproportionate levels. So we need to be very focused on the terrible surge in gender-based violence that is overcoming too many of our families and too many of our neighborhoods. And we know also from the data that when children grow up in a home where there is violence, they are more likely to be victimized, but also themselves to become violent. So we've got to attack this problem at the source and make sure that we don't sweep this under the rug. We've got to tackle gender-based violence head on, and we will do just that. We also need to be more focused, as I said, on the continued explosion of opioid addictions and overdoses that surged during COVID. And of course, we can never lose sight of the trauma that plagues way too many of our communities. And we must do all of this work in partnership, as I said, with a humble heart, a listening ear, and our hand extended to work together with the people who are already doing the Lord's work on all of these issues and more that will be so critical for our work to try to bend the curve of the violence, not just on a short-term basis, but once and for all. I read a story recently. It was about Mexico City and Mexico and some of the violence that's happening there. And there was a woman quoted in the article whose words just struck me to my core. And she said, you know what? Governments come and go, mayors come and go, but violence lasts forever. I bet that woman's words resonate with so many people in our city. And ladies and gentlemen, I am determined that that will not be the lesson in the story of the city of Chicago. We have to be all in on this. As I've been saying, we have a lot to celebrate in the city of Chicago. We have a lot to be grateful for coming out of the pandemic. We literally banded together to save each other's lives in the face of a terrible, deadly virus that is still here, that is still challenging us. Our economy is coming back. We have good news on almost every front. But none of that matters to the child in North Lawndale, or in Inglewood, or in Roseland, or in South Shore, or so many other places in our city that doesn't feel safe even in her home. It's heartbreaking, but more to the point, it is unacceptable. It is unacceptable, and we need to stand together united, not just to say words, but to take action. There was a young man that challenged me, rightfully so, following the murder of Adam Toledo. And he said to me, Mayor, I want to know what tangible, concrete steps you are going to take. That young man's words have come back to me over and over again because he was right. We need to demonstrate tangible, concrete steps that we are taking in every neighborhood where violence has robbed too many people of their faith in themselves, in their community, and in our city. We need to be able to speak to the people who feel such pain and trauma by what is happening on their block every single day. We need to step up and do more. And let this day mark that day. The day that we brought all of our city government focused together on the singular mission and challenge of our lifetime, and that is restoring peace in our neighborhoods. I accept that challenge. I accept that challenge because that is my obligation as mayor, but it's my obligation as a resident of this city. I've lived here for more of my life than any place else. I love this city. I love the people. And we have to stand together if we are going to solve this challenge of our lifetime. People are here from all over, from community-based organizations. We will be reaching out and bringing in members of our faith community. Our men and women in organized labor, I can't tell you how much it means for you to be here and to say, we're with you in this fight. We all have to be in this fight together. It means everything to the future of our city, who we identify as Chicagoans. We have to make a difference in this moment. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm determined, but more importantly, I'm convinced that we will. We fought for our lives against COVID. We must similarly fight for our lives against this violence. Join me in this fight. Together, I know we can make a difference. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon. It's a tough act to follow, our mayor. Once again for our mayor. So my name is Norman Kerr. I'm with the Office of Violence Reduction in the City of Chicago's office. And this is a great day. It's a beautiful day. We're on a beautiful campus, UCAN's beautiful campus. Look at this. A residential facility that houses young people, administrative office in the North Lawndale community on the west side. So I want to give a special thank you to you all for hosting this event. Also a special thank you to Alderman Scott for your leadership in the community. And I also want to thank Mayor Lightfoot for her vision and her leadership. And it is indeed an honor to work on her team. As part of the Community Safety Coordination Center approach, the city will utilize best practices from the COVID-19 pandemic to implement a whole of government community-driven approach to violence prevention and reduction. That approach to addressing COVID was led by Dr. Arwady, which you'll hear from in a second, and also Tamara Mahal, who is working on addressing violence as well, so we appreciate them. This process will engage residents and organizations in ways that are inclusive of whole community and include representatives from all sectors, provide transparent data sources and analysis on violent crime and the root causes of violence, listen to communities to identify what capabilities already exist to prevent and reduce violence, and where the city can assist in garnering additional resources, and coordinate city services to rapidly respond to the needs identified by community members to prevent and reduce violence. As the summer safety strategy, which we've been implementing for the last 16 weeks, builds on our City, Our Safety plan and addresses violence at the hyper-local level. It is a coordinated effort that includes participation from various city departments and community-based partners to collectively focus on 15 police beats on the south and west sides of Chicago. These beats were selected using data indicating that these areas had the highest levels of violence over the past 3 summers, 2018, 2019, and 2020. In late April, we designated the 15 beats into 4 zones, 2 on the west side, 2 on the south side, and we have now been meeting for the last 16 weeks with one zone meeting occurring each day, Tuesday through Friday, with discussions about recent incidents of violence over the last week in each zone, city departments allocating their services in real time to support each zone and coordinating various activities to increase presence and safety as well. We have been relying on community partner organizations, such as street outreach groups. Many of them are here today. Enlace, INVC, UCAN, of course, Target Area, and we thank you for your work. Also, youth development partners and mental health providers to lead community engagement activities and events to increase presence. According to the Violence Reduction Dashboard, a public-facing data portal that shares real-time crime data from the police department, anybody can access this data. There have been, the preliminary data indicates thus far that we've seen overall combined reductions of 35% in homicides and 10% in shootings in these 4 zones in comparison to the same time frame in 2020. We believe that we're headed in the right direction, utilizing lessons learned from the Summer Safety Strategy as we move forward with the Community Safety Coordination Center. This requires more than government partners. We need community partners in this effort to co-lead and collaborate. I want to truly express my thanks to all our partners in city departments and those in the trenches in communities that have worked tirelessly to support these efforts. Looking forward to continuing this work with an all-city approach to creating a safer Chicago. I want to thank you all again.
Thank you all so much for being here. Allison Arwady, Commissioner at the Chicago Department of Public Health. I'll be brief. Obviously, we have learned a lot of messages. We've learned a lot of lessons from COVID. I think and I hope one of the most important ones is that when any part of our city is not well, our city is not well. That is not only true for infectious diseases, it is also true for issues of community violence and behavioral health. And I'll tell you, throughout this whole COVID pandemic, of course, the huge majority of the people who work for CDPH were pulled into the COVID response. But the one group we did not touch were our folks working in behavioral health, mental health, substance use, violence prevention, because those two were on the rise. They're affected by everything else that is happening in community. And we've made investments, we've made work, but we want to take the approaches that we've used in COVID, take those lessons, and say, let's take the ideas that everybody has, get coordinated, and try to implement them. We talk a lot about using data, right? And in COVID as well. But for COVID, we don't just say, where are we seeing the cases? We say, what's the data around what we're doing about it? Where are we putting testing? What are we doing around vaccine? What are the community groups doing? What is the healthcare system doing? And where we think about for so long how we've talked about violence and violence data, we talk about the outcomes, we talk about the homicides, we talk about the domestic-based violence and other violence, and that's critical and important. But we have to use that data, pair it with the data of our response. And when I say our response, I don't just mean government. I mean the dozens and dozens and dozens of groups around this city that are working so hard on this issue. We do not have all of the answers about this. I was just talking before, we don't have a vaccine for violence in the way that we do for COVID. But we have seen the power of an entire city coming together around COVID. And that's because we've taken not just a whole of government approach, but a whole of city approach. We've been nimble, we've admitted when we've gotten it wrong, and we've stepped back up the next day and said, let's try to do it again better. We've got to take that same approach, and we've got to do it in a way that's coordinated. We'll use data. Healthy Chicago 2025, which even before COVID was the blueprint for the health department for the next 5 years in terms of not just what we were going to do, but with cities across the whole city. It's focused on the racial life expectancy gap. Number one, prior to COVID, chronic diseases, which gets to all the root causes. Number 2 is gun-related homicide. Number 3 is infant mortality. Number 4 is HIV and other infectious diseases, which in COVID, of course, has risen up. And number 5 is opioid overdose. So we're not taking our eye off the ball with COVID, but we're taking the lessons to focus on those other parts related to behavioral health where our city is also hurting, and where when one part of the city is not well, the whole city is not well. We're thrilled to be supporting this effort. CDPH will be putting its resources related to behavioral health into it, looking forward to learning from people who have been working in this space, using our data chops, and trying to take the lessons that we've learned so far. And I agree with the mayor. This is the issue that we've all got to put front and center. Thank you.
Good morning. Keith Richardson, the president of the American Postal Workers Union, Chicago Local 1. Today is a sad day, and if I can take a moment, I just want to announce this morning we lost a great man. The national president of the AFL-CIO, Richard Trumka, he passed away this morning. And on behalf of the Chicago Federation of Labor, my union, the American Postal Worker Union, and all of our union folks here in Chicago, we just want to reach out to Brother Trumka's family, give our heartfelt condolences, and we know that heaven has gained a true champion this morning. Again, like I said, I'm Keith Richardson, the president of the American Postal Workers Union, Chicago Local 1. I'm also the chair of the Chicago Federation of Labor's Civil Rights and Human Relations Committee. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for inviting me today. The centralized coordination of resources is a crucial step in getting our most at-risk residents meaningful employment opportunities that can steer them away from a life of violence. I want to commend Mayor Lightfoot for starting up the Violence Intervention Coordination Center to act as a bay of operations toward ensuring our work to empower Chicagoans is collaborative and community-driven. The diversity of the labor movement in Chicago is representative of the diversity of the people of Chicago. 500,000 working women and men, Black, white, Hispanic, and Asian, are all union members. Labor leaders of color, like myself, and their members live and work across our city. After a day's work, they return to their families, to neighborhoods on the south side, west side, east, and north. They are active in their community, block clubs, neighborhoods, and churches. Many labor leaders and members have felt the pain of crime and violence that happens in our city. For many, the shootings and murders have struck close to home. My family is no exception. In the summer of 1999, my older brother, Federo, he was kidnapped and stuffed in the trunk of his car. He was brutally murdered by violence that started here in this city. My mother was heartbroken, and she had to lay her oldest son to rest. Until the day she died, she was grief-stricken. Her own quality of life was diminished by the heinous act. She was never the same. His children were left without a father, and his grandchildren will never know their granddad. It was tragic then, and even more tragic now that similar instances continue to happen. Kids are gunned down, people can't drive down the street to make it home. It's crazy, it's senseless, and it has to and needs to stop. In the labor movement, when one worker is injured, we are all injured. In that spirit of solidarity that drives the labor movement to lift up workers and fight for dignity, respect, and value. We need to have that same solidarity here in our city to bring peace. When a person is a victim of violence, it affects us all. Take a cue from the labor movement. We are all connected. When my brother, your brother, my sister or yours on the south side is hurting from the violence, it touches me. I know it touches you. We have to come together to send a message that is not okay. No snitching is not okay. If you see something, you need to say something. In that spirit of solidarity, the same spirit that lifts up all working families, we call for peace in our city. to end the violence, to end the pain that our sisters and brothers are feeling. Thank you, and solidarity.
Good afternoon, everyone. About over 152 years ago, UCAN started. We originally started out as an orphanage, which today is known as a residential facility. From there, we expanded into trauma-informed care, clinical services, case management, all kind of other services, alternative schools, whatever you find in the case management service world, we do. For the last 8 or so years, under the former leadership of Mr. Norman Kerr, we expanded into violence intervention prevention services. During those 8 years, we have had the opportunity to hire a bunch of people from the community as outreach workers and violence interrupters, whose job it is to be in the front lines, be in the trenches, as some language has been used, to try to prevent violence in the first place or try to prevent retaliation afterwards. That is not a 9-to-5 job. Right now, my people are working some 7 days a week into the wee morning hours, and they're on call 24 hours a day when there's a shooting that occurs. I would say thank you to our Commander Calderon and First Deputy. Give them a hand, because they're at the forefront of helping us with this stuff. All right? We have a problem. You know, we've talked about COVID, but we have an epidemic as well of violence in this city. You know, our saying here at UCAN is that youth who have experienced trauma in their lives, they're our future leaders. Whether you like it or not, they're our future leaders, and we better do something about this. And under the leadership of this mayor, we are doing something. Her predecessor did not invest like she's investing. The predecessor to that predecessor didn't invest like she's investing. By the way, you've been talking about, you're thinking about leaving, that you're not gonna run again? You better stop thinking like that, all right? This did not happen. This violence took a long time to get here. Mayor, it's not gonna take 2 years to go away. We need leaders like you, leaders like Norm, other leaders in our departments and whatnot, our various city departments, to be at the forefront to try to stop this violence. Because if we don't stop this, my God, you're seeing these mass shootings. You know, we had a couple of weeks ago, 5 people being shot at a time. The commanders in the police department will tell you, weapons of destruction, of military type weapons are in our communities. We've got to do something about that. But, let me make this perfectly clear. We can't lock away people in mass numbers. We've got to get to them before they get infected with this violence. Someone was talking about our young ages, right? It's estimated by the time you're 4 or 5 years old, you know, you learn, you see what's around you, you do what others do, right? If you grow up in a household where dad beats up mom, well, guess what you're gonna do, right? If you grow up in that type of environment, you're more than likely to follow in those footsteps. We've got to change that paradigm. We've got to do a paradigm shift. UCAN is here to try to help that. With that creation of the Safety Coordination Center that you've done, that is a fantastic idea. I applaud that. We need that. Again, this mayor has invested, the amount of money you've invested so far, and we hope to continue that investment, has never been achieved in the city of Chicago. And I've been here all my life. Grew up in the Humboldt Park community and worked in various other communities in the city of Chicago. With that being said, I thank you for coming here today, and hey, we're partners in this. We all have to be partners. The other non-for-profits, the political sector, law enforcement, the private sector, the religious sector. We all got to work together if we're going to get a handle on this violence. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Before I take your questions, I wonder if the labor leaders can just join me for a moment. Come on in, guys. Come stand with me, please. Come on in. Come on up. So some might be saying, wait, we're talking about community safety. Why are the labor leaders here? Well, I think that Keith really said it right. These folks live in communities. the men and women that they represent live in our communities. They feel it just as deeply as anyone else. They have lost members to violence. And we have to have our arms outstretched to the community of the willing to get the work done that needs to get done. We need this kind of solidarity. And I am grateful and appreciative. They've been talking to me now for weeks about, Mayor, what can we do? How can we step up? How can we as black men really show the leadership to other young black and brown men about what it means to be a man? What truly is power? Power isn't in gripping a gun. Power isn't taking care of yourself and taking care of your families. That's what this is about. So I just want to say thank you for stepping up. Thank you for really being here for your members, but also being a member of this community. And thank you so much. The work is hard, and sometimes we're going to be despairing. But if we are united together, as I know we will be, and follow the leadership, an example of organized labor and the solidarity of feeling that what happens to one happens to all, we are going to move forward in a way that we've never seen before in the city. So thank you all so very much for joining us. Thank you. Much appreciated. Absolutely. Thank you. And now happy to take any questions from the media.
The mic to each of you. 2 questions per reporter, please. We'll start off with Mariano from Univision.
Mayor, how do you do? How much money is the city going to invest? How much money is the city going to invest in this initiative?
Well, we've already invested over $50 million, and it's my expectation that we will get the support of the City Council to make even more investments based on that. Now, how much and where is really going to depend on the feedback that we get from the community, what the data tells us, but we have to be in this for the long term. This can't be episodic. I mean, one of the things that I know from talking to so many community-based organizations, if we're only funding for a year, or even if we're funding for 2 years, they can't plan, they can't hire, they can't execute. And the urgency, not just of this moment, but what we need to do really requires long-term, multi-year commitments. And I'm confident that we'll win the support of City Council to do just that.
And that was the point of my question, because the city spent about $2 billion in repression in the Chicago Police Department last year and $50 million in prevention of violence. Is it going to be the same proportion with the money coming from the federal government?
Well, luckily we do have more money available to us as a result of the ARP money. So now, let me just be clear. We spent $50 million in very specific targeted programs around street outreach, victim services, and so forth. But if you look at the totality of what we have invested in the city, thinking about the root causes, it's multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. I view the investments through Invest Southwest, through our capital program, which is a multi-billion-dollar program. All of those things are critical to building healthy, safe, vibrant neighborhoods. I singled out the 50 to talk about these targeted services, but the amount of money that we spent overall on building communities, particularly on the south and the west side, and other areas of the city that are most vulnerable, that need it most, is in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hi, Mayor. I had a similar question, so I'm going to move on to a question from Fran Spielman from the Chicago Sun-Times. She asked me to ask you this question. Are you satisfied with the way the Chicago Park District Superintendent Mike Kelly handled the claims made by the female lifeguard? If not, what should have been done? Should Kelly keep his job? Should he be disciplined, suspended, or fired?
Well, look, the allegations that have been brought forth are very serious. And I've said this now multiple times over going back several months when these issues first came to light. No parent should have to worry that they're sending their child to a park district program, lifeguard or whatever. And I say that as a parent who sent my child to park district programs. Every parent has to have comfort that they're being safe. The Park District earlier this year took a number of steps to address the issues in that particular program, but overall, renewed training, frankly, getting rid of people that were problematic. But we've got to make sure that we're focused, and when these allegations arise, they have to be taken seriously, and action has to be swift. So I feel like they've taken the steps that are necessary, but we can never rest on issues like this. Unfortunately, we know that programs where youth gather are magnets for predators. And we've got to be constantly diligent to make sure that our kids know what their rights are, that our parents know what their rights are, that we have an avenue for children and their parents to report. But when those reports happen, we have to take them seriously and act swiftly.
Andy brings sometimes. Andy? Here you go.
Madam Mayor, how do you feel the programs are working, citywide, across the city, outside of those areas that you've looked at, that you've invested this money in?
Yeah.
Shootings are up, and murders are basically flat.
Yeah.
How do you feel this is working?
Look, I think no one can be satisfied with where we are right now in shootings and homicides. I'm not satisfied with where we are in the uptick that we're seeing in domestic violence or in the number of opioid addictions and overdoses. No one can be satisfied with these numbers. The challenges that we're facing here in the city of Chicago, unfortunately, are challenges that we're seeing nationwide. Every major city, from New York to LA and everywhere in between, is seeing this level of violence in 2020 and 2021. We were hoping that it would just be something that's pandemic related, and I think it is, but it's continued. And unlike other cities that are continuing to see a climb, we have started to see a downward trend, really starting in April, May, June. July was a little flat, but I've told the police department at our weekly meeting this week, August is make or break. We've got to double down more, but we know that the problems that we are seeing are not going to be solved entirely by law enforcement. They're just not. That is the entire point of coordinating city resources, bringing everybody together under one roof, learning the lessons that we learned from COVID. When we use a whole of government approach, truly, by bringing people together shoulder to shoulder, so people in DFSS know what the people in public health are doing, the people in parks, the people in schools, under one roof, we have been able to move mountains. We proved that in COVID, and we will do this again with community violence. I'm confident of that.
Mayor Rob Sneak, WGN.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. So the Winters family is filing a lawsuit against the city. I don't know if you saw the report yesterday from saying that their civil rights were violated through the Chicago Police Department. The concern from this family is basically that you promised new rules for gun pointing at people during home entries when it comes to the police department, but still no announcement has been made. And you said this back March the 3rd. How is that coming along, and when do you think that you will make this new announcement concerning that?
Well, I'm not as familiar with that case, and obviously because there's litigation threatened, I won't talk much about it. My understanding is that that was an incident that occurred back in 2019. The rules have been changed. And look, there's more that we always can learn, and the rules changing doesn't take away that family's sense of violation and trauma. I understand that, but the rules have been changed, and we will continue to look for other ways to make sure that when police are taking action, they do it in a way that is constitutional and obviously respectful of individuals' rights.
Back on that, I believe you pretty much said that there will be other rules announced since the Anjanette Young controversy.
Yeah,
and that hasn't come out yet.
And no, that's not true, sir. There have been. We have completely revamped, for example, our search warrant policy that specifically addresses how to go into a house, what to do, and particularly safeguards around children. So that was announced, I believe, back in June or earlier. We can get you the information if you're not familiar with it, but of course we have. We learn from the issues and challenges that the community has brought forward to us, and we take decisive action, and we certainly have done that when it comes to search warrant. We first addressed this in January of 2020, learned a lot through that process, and more coming to light around Ms. Young's circumstances. And in conjunction with the independent monitor, through our consent decree process, stood up an entirely new search warrant policy and procedure. Similarly, did the same thing regarding foot chases because of what we were seeing and the challenges. remember that as a candidate back in 2018, I flagged foot pursuits as an issue. We've now addressed that as a city, and more to come. So we don't stand silent when issues are happening, particularly when it comes to concerns about allegations that the police have violated anybody's constitutional rights.
My last question, too, is regarding actually this today. There have been multiple efforts to curb violence here in the city.
Yep.
And I think the big question people are wondering is how are you going to get people in these communities who are already kind of doing the bad things in the community to actually utilize these new services? There seems to be a sense of people saying that this isn't going to work. This is just one more thing that they're announcing, but this isn't going to help. What do you say to those people?
There's always going to be skepticism, but I'm going to remain optimistic. And I'm going to remain optimistic because of the people that we are in partnership in the communities who are doing this work, who have reached out to us, have talked to us about what the community needs. And the point of this is for the city government itself to break out of its silos and be together and be innovative, and then make sure that we are building those tables and working at tables that have already been built with community members. And I'm confident that we will see progress. The skepticism it has to be met with the facts. As Norm Kerr, who's our director of violence prevention, said, we focused this summer for the last 16 weeks on 15 beats over 4 zones on the south and the west side. We brought that whole of government approach, but also bringing the community partnership and going into those communities to make sure that we were understanding what was happening on the ground, literally at a block by block level. And what have we seen? Significant progress in reducing homicides and violence. We are going to scale that up to other communities that are vulnerable to gun violence, to gender-based violence, to shootings, and use the lessons learned from the course of this summer on a year-round basis with the city focused in an operations center so we can be more responsive and more nimble to communities. So, you know, as the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. People will be skeptical until we see a much more substantial reduction, but we know in those little pilot areas that we have piloted over the course of the summer, we've made meaningful progress. And so I feel very optimistic that we can scale that up, go to other communities, and bring the same kind of focus and resources.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi. If I could bring it back for a moment to the lifeguards and
Yep.
just ask, CO Kelly has said that he acted immediately when he became aware of the issue, but it was 41 days between the time he got the complaint, said he would forward it, and when he actually did forward it. Is 41 days consistent with what he said? Is that immediate? And what would you say to the young woman that now knows that he did not act until 41 days
Well,
later?
what I will say is this, as I said before, anytime there's an allegation that a child has been violated in any way, everyone has to be immediately focused, taking it seriously, investigating it, and making sure that that child is taken out of harm's way, period.
She was already a former lifeguard by that point. He told her that he would give it to the inspector.
Can you use the microphone, sir?
Sorry. But the lifeguard had already quit. She told him that he told her that he was going to send it to the inspector general, didn't do it for 41 days. Does that align with his duty to report serious misconduct?
Look, I think that there's got to always be a sense of urgency around anything where there's an allegation that's brought, whether it's an allegation that had happened today or in the instance of the young woman that you're referring to, an instance that happened previously. We've got to take these allegations seriously. We've got to act responsibly. We've got to make sure not only that the inspector general, but if there's something that suggests that there's criminal conduct afoot, then we've got to report it to law enforcement. I believe very, very strongly in that.
Hi.
Hi there.
So I guess
I'm going to just ask you to speak up a little with the mask. It's hard to hear.
So going back to the financial aspect of this program, is there any funds allocated for the startup costs for actually creating this committee and opening such center?
So it's not a committee. It's a center. And in the first instance, what we're doing is bringing together all of the city employees who are already working on this work. So they're engaged in programmatic work for monies that have already been allocated, and we're bringing them all together in one space. Yes, there's some nominal costs associated with bringing everybody together, but that's really inconsequential. The focus is breaking people out of their silos, bringing them together so the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, and it creates a synergy where there's information sharing, there can be innovation, and we can be more responsive to the needs of our residents. So yes, I'm going to, of course, in the budget, ask for more resources to fund this, but this work is already being funded. This is about being more coordinated and collaborative under one roof. We saw that work with great success in COVID. We want to borrow a page from that book and use it on community-based violence.
And then I had a different question. So there's already so many community organizations, and you've talked about how you're going to find tables that have already existed to join.
Yeah.
How do you coordinate? There just seem to be so many groups that are already doing this work. How do you bring that many people to the same table under one roof?
Well, it's not necessarily going to be the same table, right? It's got to be, the solutions have to be unique to particular communities, but it's real simple, but real complicated. You go and you say, hey, Frank, what are you doing in North Lawndale? Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're feeling on the ground. What are you seeing? Who else should we be talking to focus on this area in North Lawndale where we're seeing the highest concentration of violence and shootings and using the data? So it's those kind of conversations that are already happening, but we're bringing more focus and attention to those and using data to really inform where we need to be going, the outreach that we need to be focused on. So that's really, in its simplest form, what this will be about. And I'm simplifying it, of course, and giving due respect to organizations like UCAN, but others across the city that have been doing this work for decades, but need the support and focus of the city to be the convener, need additional resources, but also we need them to make sure that we are focusing our resources in the right places to reach the right people and not just putting out resources on hoping for the best. This is a concentrated, focused, intentional, collaborative effort, starting first with bringing city workers together to make sure that we are in collaboration with each other, that we do see 360 across these communities about what's happening on the ground, and to make sure that we're getting the most catalytic effect for the resources that we're investing in communities.
Mayor, Mariano has a final question. Here you go, Mariano.
He must like you if he's giving you a follow-up.
We're not related. Mayor, community trust is key. You've said it many times to fight violence, and diversity in leadership is key to get that trust. Alderman Villegas believes that you don't have enough people in leadership positions, Latino people in leadership positions in the Chicago Police Department, nor in your government. What do you answer to that?
I don't think that's accurate. Obviously, I appreciate the alderman's focus on making sure that there's a diversity, but diversity comes in many forms and focus. But also what we need is people who have the heart for the city, the understanding of what's going on in community. You can't go into some communities and try to speak to them with people who don't know them or don't have cultural literacy. We absolutely understand that. And that's why we are constantly looking and recruiting talent. But I'm just going to have to disagree with my friend Alderman Villegas. Yes, of course, are we looking for opportunities to bring more people of color into our administration? I'm going to challenge him to see a mayor's office staff and certainly senior leadership that's more diverse than mine. You're not going to find it. I know. I worked in other mayor's offices. I understand what they look like. That doesn't mean that we rest on our laurels. But absolutely, we value diversity. All you got to do is look at my senior leadership team any day. Mostly women of color, and a whole array. So I believe that we are best when what we are doing is in concert with community, and the people who are doing it reflect the diversity of our city. No question whatsoever about that, and we'll continue to work hard on all those issues, but I think we've got a very strong track record.
Folks, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.